Anyway, here to weigh in on this and much more is former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. And, Preet Bharara, the only reason I heard that he was even going to stay on was as a favor to Chuck Schumer and as an olive branch to Chuck Schumer by the president, because Chuck Schumer is friends with him, wanted him in that position, but then Chuck Schumer went snowflake left and has been totally, completely, utterly incapable of any compromise. So I guess the president said, forget it.
Well, I can't tell you the details there. I was impressed Friday. I happened to be in the White House for some other business, and I didn't realize how powerful you were.
Do you really have to stick it to me? Do you all weekend long? Everyone's advancing their conspiracy that I did this.
You have one passing monologue, and 46 U.S. attorneys are gone.
Yeah, that's the power of Hannity, right? That's so funny.
That's pretty cool. I'm glad you're my friend.
Well, you don't know who I'm going to put in their place, as if I would have any say in any of this anyway. I'll tell you a story that I can tell you is not true. And I tweeted out this week, and I said, Donald Trump's his own man. He makes his own decisions. It's so funny. People just don't want to understand him. There was a point early in the campaign, I, like others, said, do you really want to keep tweeting? He doesn't. He follows his own gut. People tell him things. That doesn't mean he's going to listen. He decides on his own. That's the type of person he is. There's a great example. I would say to him, do you really want to keep on tweeting? You're getting a lot of brushback on this. And he didn't listen to me or the many millions of others that told him not to do it, right?
Well,
I think probably you were one.
Including me. I always tell people he's pretty good at listening but very bad at obeying.
Good for him. Do you want a president that obeys?
No, that's part of why he is who he is. But in addition, I think he does have an inner ear where he listens to an amazing number of people, and then something hits and it sounds right. And in this case, by the way, this is not some great shock. At about the same point in 1993, the Attorney General Reno fired everybody in one day. I think it was
93 people. Yep. Yeah.
And, of course, at the time, we Republicans were deeply shocked that she did that, just as the Democrats now are deeply shocked.
Yeah.
But, in fact, it's a legitimate part of the business. I told you the other day that Lincoln fired 70% of the senior bureaucracy when he took over.
1,195 out of 1,500 plus.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. But he had to do it because he needed loyalists who were prepared to fight a civil war. And he knew if he kept Southern sympathizers in the federal government that they would guarantee the loss of the war. So I think Trump is coming to realize that the deep state does exist. If you just look at the donation numbers, which you heard me talk about, 95% of all federal government employee donations went to Clinton, 97% at Justice, 99% at State. And I just tell people, what do you think it'd be like to be in a place where 99 out of every $100 went to one candidate? I mean, do you think there might be a cultural bias in the room?
There's a huge bias. It's very, very interesting. So I think at some point, based on some things that I know, we're going to see how I can't say with 100% certainty, but I think we're going to begin to understand more deeply, let me put it that way, where this Russia collusion conspiracy theory that has been advanced by the media started. And we're beginning to get more and more light shed on the whole story about FISA and surveillance and the New York Times claiming and the Washington Post and their leaks and reports and the BBC and McClatchy that Trump was wiretapped. Remember, they said that, and then the president tweeted out, really? Well, if the New York Times says it, I guess it's true. But what I'm hearing from very good sources today is that, in fact, the FISA, the October FISA warrant was not about Trump. And slightly way off to the periphery, if things came up that mentioned Trump, they were all investigated. And the bigger part of the story is they were all debunked, and they moved on very quickly, as John Solomon and Sarah Carter have been reporting.
I think that's probably right. And I think, this tells you a lot about how Washington and New York and the news media work. They get a story which is not really a story, but it's a story about a story. I heard that somebody might somewhere think that blue is the next color. And then that becomes, have you heard that they're beginning to investigate blue? And then that becomes, I wonder what evil thing blue did that they're worthy of investigation. And then the question becomes, now, are you going to defend Blue with all the evil stuff they've done? Now, if you notice, there's not a single fact in that entire sequence. Not one fact. And that's what we went through.
Yeah, that's what we're going through.
You know, I'm in the middle of writing Understanding Trump, which is really fascinating, and I'm going to get you the first copy. No, I'm going to give you the second copy. I'm getting the president the first copy. But it's interesting to go back and put this stuff together because, you know, when you look, for example, at the New York Times story about the woman that Trump was so bad about, who promptly repudiates him. She says, this story is totally untrue. I told the New York Times this story was not true. He was a gentleman. He was a nice guy. I like him. And you find yourself sitting there thinking, how could they be that totally wrong? And then you get this whole story, which I think really the intelligence committees ought to dig into, because it's a comment on the growing incompetence of the American intelligence services. That they had this report that a specific person had gone to Prague to meet with the Russians. And this thing was around for months. And all these people were talking about it and gossiping about it. Oh, my God, what does it mean? Well, then it turns out that there are two people with the same name. On a worldwide basis, that's not big stuff.
You're talking about my friend Michael Cohn. And by the way,
exactly.
A pretty common name.
Yeah. And Michael, it turned out, had never been in the Czech Republic, ever.
No, not one time.
And so you have to say to yourself, okay, could they have picked up the phone and called? And
well,
said,
it's funny you say this, because after all of the nonstop, I just assumed at some point, if there was anything real to this, we would have had it by now, considering, you know, it's March, and I know we're still in the wintertime, but November 8th passed a long, long time ago, and there are entire networks building themselves up on one story, and this is this phony Russia story. And so I just decided to do some digging myself, and it didn't take a whole lot of effort to confirm that, well, in the course of different investigations that, yeah, the Trump, quote, collusion question came up, and then when they looked at it, it was debunked in about 15 seconds, and then they moved back to what they were doing. So
right.
But if you can hang on there, Mr. Speaker, I got to take a quick break here. 800-941-SEAN is our toll-free telephone number if you want to be a part of the program.
Hannity Headline, a bite-sized version of the show that you can take with you everywhere you go. To sign up today for Hannity Headlines, go to Hannity.com.
Everybody wants to compare this to Obamacare as if they can keep these guarantees going, as if we're going to have Obamacare plans and we're just going to finance it a different way. This is repealing and replacing Obamacare. So this first part is very, very important. It repeals the entire fiscal pieces of the law and replaces it with patient-centered system. And the point is, a lot of people who you just mentioned, I think they'd like to see us continue to make Americans buy what we say they should buy. We don't agree with that.
But these are critics of yours coming from the conservative side.
Look, when you're a governing party getting consensus among your wide Big Tent party, not everybody doesn't get what they want. But we're getting much better policy here.
You said keeping his promise. He has promised a lot for this legislation. He said everybody will be covered. He said costs will go down. You will be able to pick your doctor. Even in company insurance plans, you can't pick your doctor. There are limits on that. He said that you'll be able to pick whatever plan you want. He's overpromising. You can't do all that.
Look, here's their point. But you agree.
He's overpromising.
Well, I can't speak to all of those. I don't know exactly all that he said. He said we will repeal and replace Obamacare with a better system, one that gives people better access to more affordable choices, and you pick what you want. We're not going to have that. Read his speech that he gave to Congress just a few weeks ago. That speech perfectly encapsulates what we are achieving here.
The president has said there will be a bloodbath in 2018 if this isn't passed through the House and Senate.
I do believe that if we don't keep our word to the people who sent us here, yeah. Look, the most important thing for a person like myself who runs for office and tells the people we're asking to hire us, this is what I'll do if I get elected. And then if you don't do that, you're breaking your word.
All right, as we continue, final moments with former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. So, all right, Paul Ryan is going to be a bloodbath if they don't repeal and replace Obamacare. Look, you're a former speaker. Maybe I have a different perspective. But if the Club for Growth, Americans for Prosperity, Cato, Heritage Action, Freedom Works, the Freedom Caucus, some in the study group, and then Senators Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, and Marco Rubio all against the bill that you're about to roll out. Wouldn't it be better to get it right before you roll it out?
Well, I think it might have been, although, again, you and I just have a slightly different perspective, because I actually believe in the legislative process. I mean, they've taken a first run at it. They're going to find out in the next week whether they have the votes. If they don't have the votes, they're going to have to go to some amendments. That's exactly what the process ought to be. When they will, I think, in the end, get it through the House. When they get it through the House, they're going to have a very tough road in the Senate, and Senator McConnell has a really difficult job. He can only afford to lose 2 senators. Any more than that, and it's dead. So he's going to have to bring all of his skill to bear, trying to find out what is the bill. You know, I know if you are committed to ideas, and certainly you and I both share a passion about ideas. If you're committed to ideas, it gets very frustrating to watch a free society, because all these egos, all these interests, all these various approaches come to bear in a way that's sloppy and inelegant. You know, what they talk about as making sausage. But I think this may be an important step. I also believe you're going to have Tom Price sitting down as the Secretary of Health and Human Services, meeting with a lot of conservative groups, figuring out what we can do to improve the repeal of Obamacare through regulatory action. Because remember, they are very constrained by the Senate reconciliation rules. I think it's a really stupid way to govern, but then I'm a member of the House, and all House members are skeptical of the Senate. So the Senate rules really create a very narrow strangle point of what can and cannot be in the bill, and that's made it 10 times harder. The upside is that particular bill you can get through with only 50 votes plus the vice president. You don't
and it's
need
a 3-phase process. Look, I just hope they get it right. If they screw it up, it's going to be a monumental failure.
It is going to be it's going to be a really bad problem if they can't get it done. But I am going to remain your optimistic friend, believing it can get done.
All right, Mr. Speaker, thank you as always for being with us. We appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
And we'll see you on TV tonight from Washington. We're in D.C. tonight.